Thank you for joining me back here on the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast to go over this last sort of training camp update scenario that I wanted to bring up because of this update on Jaylen Warren and recently impressing at the Steelers training camp. The Steelers have been going at it now since last Thursday, I want to say. So they've had, I want to say, their fifth practice today, their first practice in pads today, and one of the biggest standouts has been Jaylen Warren. After the Steelers' third day of practice, one thing that was standing out to people already, the local media and just people reporting on their practices, was that Jaylen Warren and specifically his conditioning levels got a lot of people's attention. Warren, after that practice, said that he indeed has a lot more just energy about him. He feels a lot more in shape, and that he is very happy with how this offseason has worked out for him in terms of just being in better condition to face this training camp this year in the NFL. And also Mike Tomlin has also taken notice to it. He was asked about it, and he said, I think conditioning and things of that nature get revealed the more we keep working, and they have to put consecutive days together. But obviously, by the looks of him, he's done some nice work. So getting some praise from Mike Tomlin is always a great thing. Jaylen Warren, to add on to that, he said he credited, the way he's looking, the way he's feeling in terms of his physical shape to the training that he did with Total Athlete Training, and also former Minnesota running back Matt Asiata for their help and getting him to how he's looking right now, because he feels like the better conditioning that he's in, focusing more on running this offseason instead of just lifting, has helped him get to the shape that he is in right now. And to that, he said, I feel like I'm able to run all day. He said it helps maintaining his level of focus without having to deal with the fatigue and the tiredness of an NFL game. The more he's conditioned, the more energy he has. He feels that he can be closer to 100%, giving his best effort rather than dealing with just feeling tired and giving a half tank of effort rather than the full thing. And that's one of the things that Jaylen Warren brings, right, is that energy, spotting Najee Harris, splitting their carries, having him come in fresh with, this whole bunch of energy coming in that just punches you straight in the mouth. If you're a linebacker and you're already dragging with a long drive, to have a new running back come in and just run you over is awful. It's an awful feeling. I can't imagine what that's like, but that's what Jaylen Warren brings, and that's what the Steelers want to take advantage of this year in 2024, and what they've been trying to build up for the last few years now with all the just switching that they've had to do on offense with their coordinators. Now, that's pretty impressive. That's a good sign if you're the Steelers wanting to continue this into 2024, because if you look at last year, Jaylen Warren produced 1,154 total yards on 210 carries, touches of the ball with some receptions. So that's a pretty significant chunk of the offense that goes his way. Also leading the team with 5.3 yards per carry, and that only added to forming this great duo that he had with Najee Harris. Both of them very good at what they do. Both of them very hard to tackle. Both of them very aggressive and in your face when they're running at you as an opposing defense. And they formed one of the best running back duos, in my opinion, a biased opinion, the best running back duo in the NFL, just watching them as a Steelers fan. And with all the offensive improvements that they've made already, drafting Troy Fautanu, adding Isaac Seumalo last year, drafting Zach Frazier also this year. Now you have Najee and Jaylen Warren to benefit. After all of that, they could even become the 8th duo to each run for over 1,000 yards as a running back duo in a season. They could become the 8th duo to do that. So I think they're able to do that. They're capable of doing that. But now the question becomes, for some people, I think it will become a bigger question later on in the season, depending on where this offense goes, and the level of success that Jaylen Warren has specifically, based on how impressive he's looked right now. I think the question will become whether or not people feel comfortable enough with having Jaylen Warren now be the number one running back, because I still believe that people still believe that Najee is that number one and that Jaylen is the number two, that they split carries, but Najee is still the lead back. Once the season starts, and if Jaylen Warren carries this success into the regular season, I think it's almost inevitable for people to start bringing up the scenario of maybe the Steelers don't need Najee. If they have Jaylen Warren, could you imagine Jaylen Warren being the number one, not having to split carries, how much better he could be? That's going to be, I think, a discussion that it's just inevitable at this point with whenever you have great players like this. We brought it up with Debo and Brandon Ayuk. With these two guys also, there's always a discussion about who's the number one, who's the lead guy, and I think it's almost inevitable at this point. And could this mean, especially if the Steelers don't re-sign Najee before the start of the regular season, I feel like it could become more of a freaking conversation that people bring up about Najee just moving on, the Steelers moving on from Najee and making Jaylen Warren their number one running back. Also with the narrative around running backs, also on just how people, organizations feel like they just grow on trees, drafting the next best one, a younger one that gives you around the same production. I feel like that's just almost going to grow into the topic surrounding these two guys. But to me, I feel like it should be more of an incentive, more of a feeling around that conversation, around that question too, instead of trying to get rid of Najee and feeling safe with Jaylen Warren as your lead back. I mentioned it before on prior episodes how the NFL, I think, is shifting just more into this running back by committee, running back duos across the NFL. No longer do you just see one guy be the bell cow. It's hard to find that and have it be a sustainable level of production year in and year out because inevitably the running backs do take a lot of hits, do take a lot of punishment. So their bodies are going to get fatigued by definitely week 11 or something like that. And also depending on where your bye week is. Also, if you have an early bye week, then the rest of it is awful. The consecutive games you have to do as a running back, you get guys injured and you hardly ever see it. You're starting to see more running back duos pop up with the Lions, Jahmyr Gibbs, and David Montgomery. The Steelers obviously have something going. Nick Chubb, even Jerome Ford now with the season that he had last year. The Rams with Kyron Williams and Blake Corum now. I'm sure the 49ers would love to spot Christian McCaffrey even more because that's a situation also to kind of tie into this where you have that lead back. He's phenomenal all throughout the regular season and he stayed healthy pretty much in the playoffs, but there were those issues that popped up where he had some nagging injuries, the calf injury that kept him out of the Washington game and just other games as well. So you don't want that to be a scenario where you look to your bench and you have no idea who's going to give you what because you've never tried it out before. That's where I think the NFL is going to. And the fact that this is going to become a question, I think it should be more of a question that the Steelers should want to keep Najee. If Jaylen Warren is going to be this good, why not have another guy be just as good to add to this running game? Because the way that the Steelers have built this run-first offense, they have been developing it for some time now, drafting guys, signing guys from free agency, and you bring in Arthur Smith, who is known and having success for this running game, especially in Atlanta, where the offense, say what you want about it, the running game of that offense was very good with Bijan having the season that he did, even Tyler Algier looking impressive. No one can tell me they knew who Tyler Algier was before Arthur Smith came in there and made him a star. I think the same thing is going to happen here. Because Jaylen and Najee have already been successful, it's the ideal situation for Arthur Smith to pick it up and just make it even better. And if Jaylen Warren has a phenomenal year, they both get 1,000 yards, again, it shouldn't be a reason to just throw Najee away and think that you're going to just be as successful with just Jaylen Warren because the way that Arthur Smith runs his offense, you shouldn't want to get rid of one half of what makes you a great offense in Najee Harris just because Jaylen is growing, developing into a number one running back. It might mean that you have to pay both guys, and that becomes a problem, right? That's the biggest problem with having to pay maybe Najee $9-10 million, and then Jaylen Warren also feeling that he deserves that much. It's something unprecedented now in the NFL, paying, forget about one running back that much, paying two of them double digits. It would be considered lunacy in this day and age in the NFL. But you get to cross that bridge when you get there, right? You get to face that problem when you get to Jaylen Warren's extension. But for right now, I think they should do whatever they can to keep this duo together. They've already built in and bought into this run-first offense, so trying to move away from it and, fishing for another replacement for Najee if you do decide to move on from him just because Jaylen is showing promising signs. I don't think that's the right mindset to have. Having both of them together, I think, would only benefit the Steelers with the circumstances that they face right now. They're not in a position with not knowing really who the number one quarterback is, having doubts about the wide receivers outside of George Pickens. They're not in a position right now to throw the ball 40, 35 times a game. They need two running backs to come in, spot each other, and just be relentless with this running game at this point in time. So that's where I think this narrative should go, where the answer should go to that question of whether or not people should feel confident about the Steelers moving on from Najee just because Jaylen Warren is impressing. I don't like that mindset. They should keep both of them. That's how I feel about it. Najee has only produced 1,000-yard seasons since he's been in the NFL, and he doesn't get talked about that much because of the fact that the Steelers' offense has been atrocious up until this point, but maybe they're turning the corner a little bit. That's me being optimistic, but that's how I feel about it. Having both of them would only benefit the Steelers' offense, so I think keeping both of them would be in their best interest, but they have other negotiations to get to, Cam Hayward being one of them. Pat Freiermuth also very big contributors to this team, so how the Steelers manage those priorities will be something to keep an eye on in the weeks to come. But that'll wrap it up. That'll do it for today's show. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Please remember to like, follow, and subscribe to the show, as well as following the network on all forms of social media. And if you want to catch more of this show, check out both YouTube channels, the GSMC Podcast Network channel and the GSMC Sports Network channel, to see all forms of media content around the NFL surrounding this show. As a final reminder, tune in every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time for more discussions, more open conversations about the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. Thanking you guys for joining me. I'll see you guys all back here again with me tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to